So I wanted to talk to you guys today about kind of a sensitive topic, and that is my experience about being cheated on by my narcissistic ex. And the reason why I think cheating is one of those topics that's really sensitive to talk about is because when you have the most intimate part of your relationship violated in that way, it leaves such a deep wound inside of you that when I found out about this, I just remember saying that I felt like I was stripped down to nothing. And I did not personally find out about the cheating until about 2 weeks after we had broken up, but it had been going on, to my knowledge, the last 5 months of our relationship at least. And I just feel like it's important for you guys to hear my experiences so that way you can see a little bit of the growth of what I've come from and the kind of relationship that I got out of to where that I am now. Because the reality is when it comes to these kind of relationships, whether we want to label it as narcissistic abuse or just toxic, manipulative, we often have a lot of these same experiences and we go through a lot of the same feelings and the emotions that are associated with this. And so I just feel like it's important for you guys to hear a little bit more about my story. So I mainly want to focus on like what was going on during the relationship where I felt like something was off. And that's the thing, is a lot of times our intuition is right. Like we have these gut feelings or we see these red flags or we have these intuitions and oftentimes they're right. But we have a certain narrative that's going on in our head that we've either put there ourselves or they put it in there by constantly saying certain things to us over and over again. And I'll explain that in just a minute. But one of the fears that a lot of my clients talk about is that they don't know if they're going to be able to trust themselves again when it comes to dating because, you know, they fell for this kind of a person. They fell for this, like, monster, essentially, and, like, I didn't see it and all of this. And the reality is we saw a lot more than maybe we think that we did. We kind of have to think back on that and remember some of the things that we saw. But we did see a lot of things, and we had the intuition. We just didn't listen to it. So we can trust ourselves. We just have to learn and remember to listen to ourselves and use this relationship specifically to remind us what happens when we don't listen to that intuition. So to kind of explain this, in the last 5 months of the relationship, there was just a lot of small changes that were going on that if all of them individually were happening, it probably wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But all of them together just was really setting off my siren that something was going on. So the first one, my ex was in sales, so he was constantly on his phone. And I was working in retail sales at the time as well, so a lot of times I was working late, like my place didn't close until like 10 o'clock at night, and I closed a lot of times. But he would usually get off work anywhere between 5 or 7. Historically, he'd always been always on his phone. Would always respond to text messages really quickly because he always had his phone in his hand, whether he was like on social media or just whatever, but his phone was always next to him or he was on it. And I remember that there was times, like pretty often, where he would go like 45 minutes to an hour, maybe sometimes longer, where he just wouldn't, it wasn't even that he wasn't responding, it's that he wasn't even reading the text message, so he wasn't checking his phone. And to go 45 minutes to an hour without checking his phone was very uncharacteristic for him. And I remember I would be like, is everything, like at first it kind of concerned me, and I was like, okay, is everything like okay, or are you good? You know, I could see his location that he was at home, so I was like, what's, like, are you okay? Oh yeah, sorry, I was cleaning the floors, or oh yeah, sorry, I took a nap, or oh yeah, sorry, I was watching Criminal Minds, you know, just whatever. But something about that was even still weird, because again, when he's watching TV, he always had his phone on him. You know, I was always very amazed at how fast he could clean the entire house. And I'm like, okay, well, you can clean the entire house in 25 to 30 minutes, so why did it take you an hour this time? Like, it was just these little things that I was just like, something's off. One of the other signs was that he used to be very consistent about his schedule. Like, he would work 9 to 5 or 10 to 7, and he did not go outside of those parameters. And all of a sudden, it's when on the days he's supposed to work 9 to 5, he's there until like 7:30, sometimes 8 o'clock. I think the latest that he had ever gotten home was like 8:30, which was very late. I mean, very late for him. 10 to 7 was turning into like 9 to 7 or 8:30 to 7. Like, he just was constantly always at work. And I remember bringing that up to him as well. Like, hey, just, is everything okay with us? Like, I just feel like you're kind of avoiding me in a way, or you would rather be at work than here. And, I'm just working really hard trying to get this promotion and just trying to get these deals and like blah, blah, blah. So again, he would explain that away. Well, and I'm going to try to explain this without it sounding graphic, but essentially, there were things that were even changing like in our sex life, and he manipulated our sex life. Because if y'all know anything about like, same-sex relationships, like there's usually positions, and he completely flipped the positions that were historically the same in our relationship to cover up the fact that he was getting it somewhere else. We'll just say it that way. Because, again, when you've been with someone for so long, you know their body, you know how they respond to things, and usually, like, the intimate part of y'all's relationship doesn't have these drastic changes. And so, again, I was just like, okay, this is just weird. And I don't even remember what happened, but I just remember there was this one day where I remember literally looking at him in the kitchen. He was doing something, and I was like, he's cheating on me. I just knew it. And I didn't even know how to explain it, but I just knew it. And so there's like 2 or 3 nights, like after he went to sleep, I would go through his phone, and I wouldn't be able to find anything. Or I would stop myself from doing it, or look but not look very deeply. And every time that I looked and I couldn't find anything, the narrative that I was telling myself was, you are so insecure. Like, you are so insecure, and you're just projecting your insecurities onto him. Now, I wonder where that narrative came from. Well, it came from him. Like, I remember he used to always tell me that he was insecure, or I was insecure. And he used to always, tell me that I was too sensitive, and, I projected my insecurities on him and blah, blah, blah. And I got to the point to where I believed that narrative so deeply that when my intuition was going off and my intuition was right, I believed that narrative over my own intuition. And I think that that's what gets so twisted in these kinds of relationships, because the reality is, it's like, I do struggle with insecurities, and I do have times where I don't feel like I'm enough. But now that I'm out of it, I'm able to decipher, like, okay, am I just insecure, or is something really going on? But when you're in these kinds of relationships, your judgment is clouded, like, so much, and you're just constantly going through this whirlwind that you don't know what to believe. You're not even able to focus enough on, like, how am I feeling and what am I feeling in this moment and what is the actual truth. And when I found out about the cheating, and I found out, like I said, 2 weeks after, it made everything make so much more sense that had been going on for the last 5 months of our relationship, and everything that I was feeling and everything that I was experiencing. It just made everything make so much sense. But here's why it wounded me as deeply as it did. Cheating in itself, it creates a deep wound. But for me specifically, everything that I found out that he was doing before that, everything that I found out he was doing behind my back, the things that he was lying about, the things that he was even saying about me behind my back, none of them really surprised me that much. They were still disappointing, and they still hurt. But at the end of the day, I was like, well, I'm not terribly surprised by that. At the beginning of our relationship, he told me about how his ex-husband was very abusive to him. I don't know how true that was or not. Well, that's a different story. But this was what he told me, that his ex-husband was very abusive towards him. His ex-husband cheated on him all the time. His ex-husband would accuse him of being the cheater. But what he said to me that it was ingrained in me was, I could never cheat on someone because I know how much that hurts. And I could not hurt someone in that way. So of all the things that he was doing, and again, all the things that were being said, none of it surprised me. But the one thing that I truly believed him on was that because he constantly said that at the beginning of the relationship. I just can't cause that kind of pain to someone. So when I found out about the cheating, that was the first time, really truly the first time after the breakup, that I felt broken. Looking back on it now, I know that I was never broken because he didn't have the power to break me. But that didn't mean I didn't feel it in that moment. But I was incredibly, deeply wounded when I found that out, because it was like, God, the one thing that I fully believed and trusted him on, even that was fake. And it was devastating. And again, the reason that I'm telling you guys this is, number one, there's a reminder when it comes to cheating and it comes to these kind of relationships. The reality of the situation is cheating most of the time really has nothing to do with you. There was nothing that I could have done any differently in that relationship that would have prevented him from cheating, because it's just who he is, and it's what they do, it's who they are. He knew I was always physically available to him, so it's not like he was deprived at all. But even if there was deprivation there, that's still just a violation that's just, it is so deeply insulting in so many ways. And it was really, really hard for me not to internalize that it was my fault, or that I wasn't masculine enough, or that I, wasn't like, did I not initiate enough? Which, I mean, I felt like I did because I was being rejected all the time. And it just, I really hope that if you've gone through this, that you understand that and I know I've already said this, but I really hope that you understand that there is nothing that you could have done to prevent any of that from happening. That there was nothing, them cheating has nothing to do with our worth. Them cheating has nothing to do with our value or lack thereof. Them cheating had nothing to do with anything that we did or did not do in the relationship. It's just who they are. But the other part of this is that if you have intuitions about things that are going on in the relationship, whether it's cheating or just other things, I really encourage you to follow those intuitions and to trust them, and to trust what your gut is saying to you in that moment. And for you to take the time and ask yourself those hard questions. Is this truly just me being insecure, or is my spirit trying to tell me something in this moment? That was probably one of the biggest lessons that I learned in this relationship, was just learning to trust my intuition again, because every time I looked back and when I had an intuition about something that was going on, it was always, always right. And I'm able to now look back on the situations and say, okay, I didn't trust my intuition, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to judge myself over it. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be mad at myself over it, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to hold that against myself. All that means is I have now learned how important it is to trust and to follow my intuition, because it's usually right. I appreciate you guys being willing to listen to my story. Please comment, let me know if you want to know more about this specifically, or if you maybe just have any questions for me in regards to this, or if you ever want to know how I found out, let me know, because that story is a little bit of a doozy as well too. But so again, I hope this was helpful in some way, form, or fashion. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, comment any thoughts, questions, or just experiences that you may have, and I hope that you guys have a beautiful day.